We're going to call this meeting to order at 3:33. Are you ready, Rhonda? Okay, very good. Welcome to this afternoon's Traffic Commission meeting. The first item on the agenda is the minutes of the previous meeting, the September 2022 meeting.
Motion to approve?
Is there a motion to approve? Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
It is, the motion carries. As there being no old business, we're going to move directly into our new business action agenda. So the first item on the agenda is item 41-2022, considering the appeal from Hector Morales requesting handicap parking on, I believe it's Andrew Street, not Hazel, around the corner from his residence at 354 Prince Street. Is Mr. Morales here? Would you like to come forward? And anyone coming forward, please indicate your name and the block that you live in, the 100 block that you live in. You don't have to give the precise address. And just make sure that the microphone is working at the podium, if you don't mind. Welcome, Mr. Morales.
My name is Hector Morales. I live on 354 South Prince Street, Lancaster, PA.
Can you see is there a red light showing? Press the middle button.
There.
That's very good.
Sorry, it's my first time.
That's okay. It's everyone's first time at some point.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hi, my name is Hector Morales. I live on 354 South Prince Street, Lancaster, PA, 17603.
okay. Tell us the situation, please.
Well, I'm requesting a parking space on Andrew because I live right there on the corner, you know. As soon as I come out, I'm right there. Because I've been disabled for so long, my condition got worse. My back, my leg, my asthma, my emphysema, you could see how it sounds. And I can't walk. It's limited my walking and everything, you know. And I can't lift so much. So that's why I'm requesting the parking right there because it's close to my door. And that way I don't have to park like, you know, so far and walk down.
And if I remember correctly, you had made an application before, but there's already the approved limit of handicap spaces on
Yes,
the
I
very street
understand
itself. So you're asking for it to be around the corner, which would be
Right on the corner.
close to you, but not on the same street.
Not on the same street, but if you look at it, I'm right there.
This is, and what the view that we're seeing is the situation in question?
Yeah, right there.
Okay,
I'm sorry. It's my first time, you know.
that's okay.
You see, I live right there and right. It's,
So, would anyone want to speak to this item?
Yes, I'm the one that actually denied your request because you had reached a maximum allowable spaces. Based on your appeal, the police department has no issue with granting the handicap parking space on Andrew Street per your appeal.
All right.
And we have done that in the past where maximum allowable spaces have been reached and a resident would live very close to a corner or the nearest intersection.
I was just going to say, I never recall a circumstance where they were, definitely when they were the corner property, but I've never recalled a circumstance where we've done it where they were not the actual corner property.
Yes. Strawberry Street, there, I forget the street that comes out onto Strawberry.
Okay,
We granted one on Strawberry.
okay.
Are people able to hear that part of the conversation? Okay. So there is a precedent for doing this if it's not
Yes, sir.
the actual corner property.
There are no houses on that block, are there?
There is not. That's the side of the business.
Yeah, side of the business there, that's a side house, and they're all frontage from another street, so there is no. My only concern would have been if there were houses there, and
Right.
if somebody in that block wanted the handicapped application, I would have rescinded this one in favor of the resident that actually lived on the block, but since nobody's on that block.
Right, and I would agree with you had that been the case.
Okay. Cindy or Douglas, are there any other comments or concerns about this location?
Just one question for you, Mr. Morales. It looks like the rear of your property, there is a place where I think a car had previously been parking. Do you park at the rear of your property off of Water Street?
Yes, sir.
You do, okay. But are you seeking the handicap space because it's easier to park on the street and walk to your house? Or is the rear parking pad serving your needs?
It's more easy for me to move than be, trying to do things from far away. That way I could help myself more better.
Mm-hmm. So it's closer to your
closer
home?
to my home.
Yeah. Understood. Thank you.
But that's not an off-street parking space. That's, even the space in question that you're talking about is not an off-street parking space.
It is an off-street.
It is. He does in fact have the off-street parking. However, I believe if the space were granted on Andrew, that would reduce his distance, that he would have to walk to the front of his home. And again, without impeding any other homeowners on the block, because there are none.
Just as a matter of question, was there not a case a few months ago where someone else also had an off-street parking space and
Yes, they were on Emerald, and they had off-street behind them, but that entered into a lower section of their house where they couldn't get up through the narrow basement steps. And in that case, there wasn't an issue with the number of handicap spaces, but we did grant them the space in front of their house because they had built a handicap ramp up to their front door to be able to go from street, front door, ramp into their house.
Okay, so just as a matter of clarity of policy, we're not necessarily having a problem with losing or of converting a public parking space to handicap even if that person has off-street parking available to them.
Correct.
Given the precedents that we're saying, I just want us to be conscious of that and clear that that's the way we're going with this. Are there any other comments or questions or anything else that you wanted to share?
But that's it.
Any other comments or questions?
I guess I only had a question about, it appears that there is a space right in front of the house. I'm assuming that's from it's a nearby resident or nearby?
On Fifth Street?
Yes,
Yeah, there's already 2 handicap parking spaces approved for Fifth Street,
okay.
and I think that's 2 on each side, so I'm pretty sure there's 4 already established.
Okay. Yeah, it seems like a long block as well, so that would be more justification, I think.
There is one more thing I'd just like to make clear. With a handicap parking space, although you're applying for it, anybody with a handicap parking placard can park there. Just be aware that you do have a restaurant on that corner, so somebody could theoretically also be handicapped, use your space while they're in the restaurant.
I understand.
So if there aren't any other further comments or questions, are there any comments or questions from the public?
I'll make a motion to approve 41-2022.
Second?
There's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. The next item is item 42-2022, considering the request from Gene Cubison to modify the commercial no parking signs in the area of the 500 block of Euclid and the side street of Hager. I'm assuming you're Ms. Cubison?
Yes, I am.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm here with one of my neighbors, and I do have a small petition that a couple of the direct neighbors signed because this has turned into an issue, and I'll just kind of go over. Our biggest issue is the current sign that's there, and yeah, you're getting some of the trucks that I definitely have all the pictures of also. And the thing that comes with the sign that's there is, A, it's confusing, or the truckers are using this as their reason, and B, they're only in violation nights and weekends, which that pose a problem to the police rather than the traffic people who enforce that. So, for us, we have to call after 11. They have to return in an hour or more to say that they're still in violation, I guess, to put a ticket up. And now it's getting to be that both streets are getting filled on weekends. And I have pictures here to show you of what a weekend looks like this Saturday. This is Hager. I can pass these up to you. This is Euclid. The full street is full, including box trucks now, which is a new thing. And then there were 2 semis parked on Wabank, which means visibility at Euclid. Now you don't see because there's 2 box trucks, 2 full semis on Wabank. So it's escalating, and they're knowing that they're not getting away with it, but it can't be enforced. So we're looking possibly, if it can be done, to have a totally no commercial parking zone, because it's turned into now box trucks, semis. We had a trailer drop with cars on it. The word's out that this is a great place to park, and it's a neighborhood for us. We live here. We enjoy that green space. It used to be used as a park much more often by families and dogs and things like that. We don't see that anymore because these trucks are kind of like bordering the whole thing. And the kids come home from both middle school and elementary kind of next to all of this. So as they're coming down that street, they hit the corner of Hager and Euclid, and people avoiding the Hershey light are coming down that street, hitting the stop sign, making a right. They don't know what's next to those trucks. And some of these kids, of course, there's no sidewalk. They're maybe walking in the street. So from a safety point of view, I see this as an issue. It's not a commercial neighborhood. I can't park my RV in front of my home for more than 48 hours, and I own my property and I have the room. But yet commercial properties, some of these trucks are there 7 days. They sit there, they drop it, and then they get a car, pick them up, or they have a car there and they go. It's not a commercial parking lot. That is rare. That picture is very rare, what we're seeing now. They really aren't, they're all the time in most cases.
If I may interrupt for just a second, does the upper camera work so that she might be able to share her other pictures as well?
Oh, that's nice.
So you could see sort of the rectangle shape where the light is shining here on the table.
Got it.
Silver
Okay.
plate is.
Yep. Okay. So the thing that, and I talk loud, so that doesn't matter for me. The biggest thing is, it's gonna be hard to read. I have 4 copies.
She's trying to do focusing.
Yeah, okay. Again,
Oop.
it's the verbiage on the sign. It's commercial vehicles, 1-hour parking, which means they can stay, but it's only between 10 at night till 6 in the morning or on weekends. If not, I have copies of paper copies of them, so that's more the issue. So they're kind of skirting around this. And every time I call, and I want to talk to Sergeant DeRace, I said I hesitate calling all the time. It's not really our job to kind of monitor the neighborhood and then to inconvenience the police officers at nights and weekends. They got bigger things to do. So that's where, we're looking at that, and even if we made it just 1 hour, they're gonna get around this somehow. The word's out, and that's my biggest concern. But this is what we saw this Saturday on that street. It's not hard to go. That's good enough to see there. It's a van on the corner that's selling his van. There's another car, then there's this oil truck that every night parks now. He found his night spot, and it's every night he's there. Maybe not in that spot, but in this quadrant. Behind it is, believe it or not, somebody dropped a trailer with some cars on it and left it overnight. Then behind it's a flatbed trailer, and then behind it's another box truck alone. This is Saturday.
This past Saturday.
Then, let's just use as an example, that corner where the van is where people have to stop to look down Wabank to see, to get out, to make a left, right, whatever. It's hard to see on this one, but another 7. So you get to the corner and you can't even see down that street. So now you're not another restricted, and those are appearing just recently. They really haven't used that street as much. And then on Hager.
And is the same sign on those
Yes,
other streets as
I
well?
don't think there's any sign. I'm not sure about that street to know what the sign says.
Okay.
If there is one. And then this is a day shot because I didn't get out at night to get that one in addition because I had the day one. This is just the 2 that were sitting there on Hager. So that's my weekend that we look at a Saturday. During the day, all this was here. And even those 2 semis were sitting on Wabank. And we're looking at safety, security. That stop sign in front of this black, which would be right here, is the one that people use to hedge, not going to the light at Hershey and Wabank. So they come down the street, they're going to get to the stop sign and make a right. Well, then they're looking down the street with all those trucks. Who knows if the kids are on the other side coming from school, who knows what's walking there, people with their dogs or whatever, or another car, because the whole street visibility is now blocked. So, the days we call in a row, and we get a hold of them, and evidently it goes out on the radio, a couple days for a while it slackens, but it doesn't go away, but it gets less. Then we don't call, and they're showing up again. And it really is a safety issue, almost more than anything else. You know, it's our neighborhood, we enjoy our peace and quiet. I had a couple neighbors sign this petition, because I just knew a week ago, to do this, I would have gotten more. That, you know, the accessibility of, you know, us to our homes has been restricted now. You know, I mean, the visibility, and the church across the street, you know, they have church services, and some of those people park on the street, and they don't now. Because, again, with the 7 trucks, you really don't have all that extra flexibility.
And again, for further clarity, on those occasions when you do call the sergeant, what does happen? What kind of enforcement or what kind of action takes place so that trucks either leave or dissipate, you know, that it reduces the amount of activity?
Okay, from our point of view, there's no ticket on the window and they're still there.
Okay.
If they went out. And again, some of the officers have called. And usually it's the Saturday afternoon guys because daylight, they don't want to inconvenience me, I'm sure, at 11:30, 12:30 at night. I get that. But generally speaking, like I said, some of these are parked 4 to 7 days. So that means they're way past the whatever they call compliance of the 1 hour. And then if they did get a ticket, it didn't escalate to the point that they're gone. Those people drop the truck and are driving somewhere else, either in their own car or a pickup car, somewhere else. We don't even think they live in the neighborhood. You know, they're not walking down our street to go in one of their houses. So they're finding that this is a place, and they've got the word out. For a while, they weren't as bad on Euclid, and they were parking on Hager, hidden in that little pocket on that little downward slope, kind of behind the trees. So again, if the police officers are driving, you know, through, they really don't see it as much. But now it's getting to be, you know, that section there is where they first start. Usually that red truck's there every weekend. I mean, that's where he parks his car. And then you see there's cars parked there of residents next door. So now you have a car parked and you have this big truck, and that people are cutting the corner and there's no room to move. You have to wait till the next car comes through. So I just see safety issues as our biggest issue. And then, of course, it's an inconvenience.
Are there other things that you'd like to share or anything that you would like to come up and share as well?
Yes, my name is Karen Polite, and we live like right next to at the corner of Hershey and
Hager
and Euclid. Thank you. And 6 or 7 years ago, we came and petitioned to have those signs posted of the limited parking. And it worked for a short period of time, but now they're back, and I've called as well. And now they just continue to park. Yeah. So I am in agreement with Ms. Jean that we need to have a sign that says no commercial parking, period.
Okay. I have a couple of questions, and maybe, Douglas, it looks like you're about to contribute something. I'm curious about the permission in the first place.
Mhm.
And secondly, if it was just the petition that invited the signs in the second place, is it something as simple as just listening to the petition to remove them again? Or is there something that guarantees trucks that are not necessarily associated with the properties adjacent to be able to be there? Is this a part of a CRIZ zone or something like that I need to be aware of?
I had the same question. I was wondering what the origins of the signs were to begin with, and I don't know if anyone else on the commission can answer that. I don't know the regulations. I defer to others on the commission as to, what types of vehicles can park on a typical city street overnight like this. But at least the ordinances I'm involved with wouldn't have any bearing on that, and I don't know the origins.
Is there any other intelligence from other people on the commission?
Right down the street, it's not Lancaster City, it's actually Lancaster Township, which Manheim Township patrols. Down on Judy Lane, they had the problem where the trucks were parking along Judy Lane because there was kind of a break between Wallbank and the houses. And I just pulled it up here on the Google map. So they put up a sign that says parking restriction, commercial, recreational vehicles, and trailers, vehicles having more than 4 tires or in excess of 9,500 pounds prohibited. And it's my understanding that completely eliminated a whole lot of problems on that street.
In the township?
In the township, yes.
And is it the case that we'd either be able to adopt something similar, or is it the case that we want to actually revisit the idea of having trucks that are not residential be at this location in the first place?
So it's illegal to have a vehicle over 26,000 pounds gross value weight against ordinance parked on a city street. Over on South Marshall Street, we had a lot of the similar issues that you're having right now. We installed no commercial vehicle parking signs in that area, and that absolutely eliminated the issues. Excuse me. Some of my issues with the township verbiage, somebody's got a dually pickup truck. They can't park there. Somebody has a business that has maybe a large van, a legal Sprinter van or something to that effect. That's probably going to go in excess of your 9,000 or 9,600 pounds. My initial thought process is we make it a no commercial vehicle parking area, as we've done, period, without exception, as we've done in other parts of the city. That's absolutely going to eliminate your issues. So to go back to your question regarding enforcement, during the week, nobody's in violation during daylight hours. It's nighttime, and unfortunately, and it's not an excuse, shifts are short, and the officers are called to call, and unfortunately, some things do bump way down on that priority list. Not to say it is a minor issue to you, it's a very real issue, and it is, but sometimes in the scheme of things, it does get lost.
And we realize that. That's why we hesitated calling, and that's when I spoke with you.
Right.
You said, no, just keep
And I've
reminding
encouraged
us.
Jane and her neighbors, call. Every time you see it, call. Realizing, of course, it is not your responsibility or your obligation to be the truck police. However, if the officers have a reason to be dispatched to an area to deal with a call, okay, now we know it's happened, and they can take appropriate enforcement actions. What tends to hurt the night shift guys, if this were on day shift, I can call only a singular company to remove a large commercial vehicle. There's a single record company that can do that for us. At nighttime, that's going to be even more diminished. I think we make it no commercial vehicle parking. My caveat to that is these owner-operators, they're working for a living. Where do they then go? Are we simply pushing them to someplace else where the same issue is going to occur? Or is there an option of a place where we can give them to park? I don't have an answer to either one of those questions, but I think it's a concern because we're just going to continue to push them off into different areas of the city.
So I know we don't necessarily have the control of their business model, but in other areas, the municipality makes a prohibition and the company has to take care of whatever the charges are for parking in legal parking spaces, whether it's parking facilities or parking lots or whatever arrangements they make with others. I know that unfortunately, in some cases, that may mean that the business may say to the trucker, to the truck driver, you are responsible for those parking fees, and we don't have control over that part. One might argue that our concern is the safety, and we may be able to advocate for or try to appeal in some other way for the cost of parking the trucks elsewhere to be borne by the customer or the business, not by the trucker themselves. But one thing that I would wonder is, do we not want to just create a non-commercial zone here, non-commercial truck parking zone here, so that it's for the safety of the community?
I would agree with that assessment. From one, it's a quality of life standpoint for these folks. Nobody wants to look
And
out.
safety.
And secondarily, but more importantly, it is a line of sight issue. It is a safety issue. And I think we have the ability to eliminate, to at a minimum mitigate and eliminate the issues that exist.
Are there any other comments or suggestions or input from the commission?
LPA tickets residential vehicles if they're parked too close to intersections and things like that. Would they not do that with trucks?
I would believe they do.
They do, I'm just
I
not
see a
exactly
nodding
sure.
head
Dave,
from-
what are the hours of your staff?
Enforcement is, on street from 8 AM to 6 PM, and then residential parking at. No, your hours for going out and actually enforcing parking. So you do that, you're actually. Okay.
Hour past the current signage.
And that would create ticketing as enforcement, which hopefully becomes a deterrent. But then at a certain point, if it does not deter sufficiently,
I mean, this picture right up here, I'm clearly seeing an issue with them being parked too close to the intersection.
Yeah.
Almost up against the handicap crosswalk, and they're almost abutted up against somebody's driveway. So it's like, you could only really put a minimal vehicle there anyway. I mean, not sidewalk, driveway right there.
right.
Like, what would happen if that was just simply no parking? I mean, I know it's not gonna address every single issue, but this circumstance here, yeah, no commercial parking would help, but a no parking sign there would also deter.
But the no
That-
parking sign
yeah.
is going to prevent
Residential
Exactly.
parking, right.
Yeah.
And that, where you just pointed, is where some of the residents on that side street in some of the townhomes park. But it's not, that's not the issue if there's no trucks across the street.
Right.
So, and again, the corners, like you mentioned, that's exactly part of the problem. They also were, during the festival at the church 3 weekends ago, there was a semi parked, virtually you couldn't see the stop sign on Hager and Euclid. He was and the officer did come out. He called me right back. He was sitting in the parking lot at the church. I said, I see your car. And he said, this is really bad. And again, there's one that was an odd event that was happening, but they just filled any space they could and didn't worry if it was inconveniencing, people's sight line to make a turn on a corner that, again, they're avoiding the light. So from that standpoint.
So is there further discussion here? Is there a recommendation of what we would like to do? I see that you're looking up the ordinances to see what may or may not specifically be allowed. Did you
Yeah,
find
the-
anything?
Yeah, with Article 3, parking restrictions indicates that it details out those hours that are identified on the sign. it said oversized vehicle restrictions, no vehicle which is a gross vehicle weight rating of 9,500 pounds or more shall be allowed to remain parked on any highway or street of the city designated by the Traffic Commission for a period of more than 1 hour between the hours of 10 PM and 6 AM on each weeknight, beginning Monday night and ending Friday morning, and not more than 1 hour between the hours of 12:01 AM on Saturday and 6 AM on Monday. So I think that's where the verbiage currently on the signs came from, just to provide that reference.
So do you have any further comments that you'd like to make? Are there any further comments from the public on this item? Do we want to make a motion or a recommendation here?
My recommendation would be to make this area no commercial vehicle parking area. We've done that before in other parts of the city, and with good success. We haven't seen so much migratory traffic after the posting of these signs. That has created another flurry of complaints. That would be my recommendation.
Other comments or on that recommendation? Do you want to turn that into a motion?
I would. I would like to make a motion that the quadrant area that we're speaking of, Euclid, Hager, et cetera, if we need specific streets to make the motion, if you give me a moment, we can do that. Make a motion for that area to be posted, no commercial vehicle parking, without time restrictions or day of the week restrictions.
So there has been a motion, subject to confirmation of the streets in question.
Seconded.
There's been a motion and a second. Are there any further comments? Provisos that one wants to make sure are included? So, that being the case, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. We'll get a confirmation of which streets are affected, and
Do we just want to do that now?
Ms. Kubus, and I just want to make sure we're talking about Hager and Euclid streets, correct?
Correct. 500 block of Euclid and then Hager, and it's,
And then it's Hershey Avenue. or
no,
Wallbank-
Wallbank, it's
Road.
turning into a problem, so I don't know what that's for, and that's got the street light up there, so I don't,
It also has the old signs there on
See-
Wallbank of limited parking. The
yeah,
same
no, if you
signs
make,
that
yeah,
are
if you
there.
make, right here, no, opposite way,
Oh, right.
right there. See, that
Yes.
has turned now into an overflow.
And they have the signs there already.
Oh, yeah, they do.
So
yeah.
that whole quadrant there.
And then the other side is, of course, on Hershey, which is commercial, and there's no place to park there, so that wouldn't be and so it's this three-sided
This is,
green space.
somebody I know that lives there.
So 500 block of Hager, 1100 block of Wallbank, and 500 Euclid?
500 of Euclid, yeah.
500 Euclid, 500 Hager,
I don't know what that street numbers are.
and 1100 Wallbank.
is that confirmed?
I just want to confirm Euclid real quick, Stephen, excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they're trying to figure out little Hager and Wabank. They got the right corners, so.
Yeah, 500 Euclid, 500 Hager, 1100 block of Wallbank, posted no commercial vehicle parking without restrictions to days of the week or times of day.
Sorry, again. This is 1100.
I'm sorry, 1100 Hager,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
1100 Hager.
Well, 1100 acre.
Yes, sir.
Just a clarification about the wording. Are we saying commercial vehicles, and would that include, cars that are marked for commercial uses, or how are we wording that part again?
That would then get into a gross weight value
Okay,
that we're talking about. So I think it's 9,600 pounds?
Right. Yeah.
9,600 pounds. So that's a substantially large vehicle, and that's something that we could easily monitor and deal with.
When the sign says commercial, it's referring to the PennDOT designation of a commercial vehicle based on weight, not use.
Correct.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I believe our ordinance actually reflects that PennDOT verbiage.
okay, thanks for the clarification.
Very good. So we have the motion. It's been passed. with
Thank you.
the confirmation of the 500 block of Euclid, 1100 block of Hager, and also the 1100 of Wabank? Very good.
Okay,
So thank you very much for coming to
And
us.
from hearing from being enforced after the fact, we appreciate, because it sounds like once the signs are now up, you can do something about it. And that was our concern too.
Yes,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
thank you very much. So the next item on the agenda is item 43-2022. Consider the request from Eileen Cushy to have a traffic study for the intersection of East King Street at Marshall Street. Is Ms. Cushy available?
I believe Cindy already addressed that via email, Mr. Campbell.
Oh, okay. So
And 46.
20, or number 46.
22, yep.
So those will come off the agenda then.
Yes, those two were both addressed by Cindy.
Very good. So then the next item on the agenda is item 44-2022. Consider the request of Marjorie Mott to have a stop sign considered at the intersection of Pearl and 6th Street. Is Ms. Mott available?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I've moved here recently from Bucks County with my family, 2 young daughters and husband. We just moved in August and are loving being here in the city. Thank you so much for responding so quickly to this. 2 things I noticed right away when moving to our block was how many children lived on the street. There's at least 19 that I've easily met in these 3 months. And also how quickly cars approach Manor Street from on that 600 block where we live. There's a number of stop signs along Pearl between Columbia and Manor. I'm forgetting where the last one stops when you're heading towards Manor. I think it might be the 4th Street. So I think cars are just excited to be done with those stop signs. There's like a few in a row. And so we really see them zip around that curve. And so, yeah, I was wanting to write and to request. I read the report. So thank you so much. I'm wondering, what are the minimum warrants for a stop sign to be put in? And if there's just wondering what else we could maybe do to protect our children.
Shall I turn that over to you, Cindy?
Sure. As far as warrants for stop signs, so, there's a manual for uniform traffic control devices, which basically guides how, where signs are put, locations, size, everything that has to do with that. And there are warrants for when they are applicable. Stop signs should not be used for speed control. So that's a big tenet of that manual, just because if we put stop signs everywhere, then people will stop, paying attention to them and will just, breeze through. If they're not justified, people seem to have in their mind what they feel is justified or not, and whether they will obey them accordingly sometimes. So that's sort of the reasoning why we don't want to have stop signs used for speed control. So for an all-way stop, generally the volume, there's various warrants that go into it. There's volume, crash data, those types of things. So volume for an all-way stop, they usually like to see at least 300 vehicles per hour on any one approach. And then the cars, and with an all-way, you want sort of a similar type volume on each of the approaches. So the fact that 6th Street only has, I think it was like
Yeah, it's
probably
very
less than
minimal.
20 vehicles per hour or something, you would want that to be more in the range of like 200 vehicles per hour to justify, controlling the traffic there. So that's the basic justification for why a stop sign is not warranted at this location. There was also, I think we looked at crashes, and over 5 years, there were 2 crashes there as well. So again, that didn't necessarily warrant it from the crash side as well.
Are there other things that might be considered, or given the low volumes, is there anything that warrants further consideration?
We have this issue with a lot of streets in the city, related to speeding, above the posted speed limit for sure. So at this point, we don't have a good mechanism for implementing, slowing vehicles, as far as a process and how we prioritize those, across the city. Because, there could be things like speed humps or, if we did maybe some curb bump outs or like those kind of things. Those are some of the things that we've done to slow vehicles at other locations. But, with our safety, the things that we're focusing on now are more related to the high injury network and where we're seeing a lot of the more serious and fatal crashes, and that's where we're trying to prioritize. But, so I don't have any good suggestions related to how to slow the speeds along Pearl Street. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts or suggestions.
And this is not proximate to any of our high injury networks for Vision Zero, correct?
Correct. Manor Street is obviously, I think Manor Street is one of those, but Pearl is not.
Are there other comments from the commission regarding this particular location or this situation?
Is this picture current, or are there newer crosswalks that are in this location?
Oh, are there crosswalks?
Yeah, I mean, does this represent current situation?
Yeah,
I mean,
I
do we
think
know whether
might be
there
crosswalks.
there are parallel bars here, but are there?
It doesn't look like they could be piano keys, yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could provide updated crosswalks in this location. Piano keys style crosswalks are much more visible. It looks like the aerial imagery actually shows parallel crosswalks at all of the streets. In this view, we're only seeing them. We were only seeing them on the along 6th Street, but actually it looks like they cross Pearl now too. But could the city update the crosswalks at the very least to make the intersection more prominent for
Yeah.
drivers?
Yes, we could definitely do that.
Definitely something we can do.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? Any other comments from you?
Well, thank you for that suggestion. Appreciate that.
Are there any other comments from the rest of the public? So the addition of piano keys can be done administratively. So it does not require an action by us, but it gets noted in the minutes that is what we've elected to be able to do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for coming to us. I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a recommendation that 44-2022 be denied.
Second?
There's been a motion and a second. All in favor, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is item 45-2022. Consider a request from Melissa Hernandez to seek approval of a loading zone on Dolphin Street for El Jibarito Restaurant located at 602 South Lime Street. Ms. Hernandez?
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
it's El Jibarito. Okay.
El Jibarito.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'm the new business owner of this restaurant this is year 2. And I'm really busy and I make really good food. And so I have a lot of deliveries. A lot of people they come and go really quick, we're really fast. I'm all takeout. And so I'm asking if you put a loading zone there, or I'm requesting a loading zone for my people who bring me Turkey Hill drinks, Goya foods, deliveries from Eagle Foods, because what's happening is that people get scared, my customers and my deliveries, and they're getting tickets, like $75, And so, my food is very inexpensive, so it breaks my heart. They come and get a $2 empanada and they got to pay $75 for a ticket. And so I'm requesting in this space, if you can consider whatever this is. I requested 64 feet, but obviously you're only allowing 35 or something. So
And just for clarification, you're looking for
a
a
loading
space
zone.
for loading of supplies,
Yeah,
or also an area where people can stop and pick up food?
obviously, yeah.
Both.
Mhm.
And she indicated that she was requesting for 64, but that there's a limitation of 35?
Yeah, there's a notation here. I requested 64, but then Sergeant Geraci came out and he did some other measurements. And so
I
the
don't think
paper,
there's a limitation.
the paper now says 64. I'm sorry, 35 feet.
I think that was. Was the 35, yeah, yes. There is no limitation on the loading zone, but you were recommending.
For them it is.
Okay, is there?
Because two issues. One, there's a depressed curb for a driveway. Two, there's a physical garage. For me to allow people to park there,
Yeah, so you're just saying the space isn't there.
correct.
I guess my issue is that there is no parking on that side of the street. It's a two-way street and there's not enough room.
So yes. This. So I apologize for having to take that call. So Ms. Hernandez has an issue. She has business. She wants people to come in and get food. We have a street that's no parking on that side of the street. It creates site issues. It creates parking issues. So we try to get people to move. I have personally been there and people want to argue with me. And if they're arguing with me, they're certainly arguing with my non-sworn staff. And it doesn't leave us a whole lot of option other than, okay, we're going to cite you. So that turns maybe a $10 meal into a $95 meal. And we certainly don't want to do that. I don't want to detract from her business. She brings her complaints to me. And I'm looking at this area and I'm like, you know what? Maybe we can meet in the middle. And my suggestion was maybe we can give her a load zone. That load zone would be that minimal distance, which would still allow for a eastbound travel to negotiate around where that vehicle would be. Traffic would be able to safely negotiate around that, get back into a lane of travel, still provide proper site clearance out onto Lime Street, and at the same time, allow patrons to stop for a minimal amount of time, get food, and leave. The only other options that I have are, it stays exactly as it is. And we have no choice but to enforce the no parking area. I want to try to make it amicable for everybody. And this was my suggestion that I brought to Ms. Hernandez. And I told her I would not oppose it. However, the board would have to make that educated, informed decision. So my suggestion was where you see that red SUV in the picture is where that load zone would roughly start and then go back the 35 feet. Is that what I said, Ms. Hernandez?
35.
Yeah, 35 feet to the west, which would stop just short of the depressed curb and allow for approximately 2 vehicles to occupy that spot at any one time. Directly across from where you see that red SUV is a bus stop. So that area should not be occupied at all. And again, enforcement would continue in that area should those things occur because she does have deliveries coming in. There's a corner store diagonally across that has deliveries coming in. So it is a very congested area. So right across Lime Street at Dauphin, there's another corner store. They also get deliveries. So it gets really busy in that area. And other than this suggestion, I have none to help her out with.
And again, just for, as a matter of clarity, the corner store on the diagonally across, that happens to have parking on the side in question already.
On Dauphin Street, across the line where that white van is, yes, but there is no parking on that side of Lime Street where the cursor is right now. There is none.
I think that block is permit parking. And then that, where that white van is, I believe they may have a special sign for that loading vehicle,
I can't
think they
confirm
do.
or deny that. I don't know.
Hey, Rhonda, can you swing back to that red SUV in front of the restaurant real quick? Is there any parking allowed on this entire stretch of block?
No. There is no parking on the south side of that street from Rockland to Lime Street. None.
So by default, a load zone allows for parking up to 20 minutes. So if we create parking there, what's going to happen if we get people down the street that say, hey, they got parking down there, why couldn't we have parking on this side of the street in front of our houses further down?
So there are no houses further down
Okay,
on the street.
like right there. So we got
Swing back,
houses here.
swing back around for me.
I guess
There is, yeah.
the issue
You're right.
is that, and I'm not necessarily saying I'm opposed to this, but you're creating a situation where, yeah, vehicles are gonna have to yield to each other. You can't get, if we allow parking on that side, you can't get two vehicles to, pass each other. So they would have to yield.
At that particular area, in that small area, is it technically a yield? Yes, I can't argue that point and say that it's not. However, there is, only because I've watched it, there is enough room for two vehicles to pass. There
Because
is.
it's opposite
It's
to the bus stop, you mean?
correct.
Okay.
Correct. And again, this is my only potential solution to alleviate a problem. And I don't have another solution.
Is on Lime Street an option?
It's not. No.
Lime Street has even
No.
more traffic.
Yeah. That's almost constantly stacked where you're looking right now. The only other real option is the city parking lot that is to the west of the location.
Now go back to the front of that 602 South Lime Street, because that's all of mine as well. And that handicap parking is no longer there.
But nonetheless, it's not yours. It is a public street, so anybody could
okay.
occupy those parking spaces.
Okay,
And they do.
okay.
Again, the only legitimate off-street parking is that city parking lot.
So-
It is not always as empty as it appears, but
Yeah.
that's the only thing that's left.
I don't
So
think that's-
where the red pickup truck is, whose parking is that?
Mine.
That is technically no parking, Mr. Campbell.
Okay.
That entire side of the street, as it stands right now, is no parking. So
Where,
that
right
depressed curb is,
That truck right there, you mean? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
so that depressed curb belongs
That's
to,
mine.
the restaurant,
Uh-huh.
as does that small garage to the right of that red pickup truck.
Mm-hmm.
So if I allow that load zone to come further west behind that red pickup truck, that's blocking a depressed curb.
I guess I was
Driveway.
wondering, is there a prohibition for the place where the pickup truck is parked to be the pickup zone? Where you'd have to go
I
into
think
the
that would
parking
create
space?
more of a safety issue with vehicles pulling in, backing out, et cetera, out of that parking area. And they typically park personal vehicles in that spot as well. And there's like a portico canopy type thing that exists there now. It's not as open as it appears.
It's a pergola, and I park my vehicle there. Actually, two vehicles can park there, but it's just mine.
So it sounds as if we allow a loading zone at this particular case, we're setting a different kind of a precedent that in cases where there is no parking on a particular street, we would create exceptional parking for a loading zone in the cases where a facility has a desire or a need for pickup and/or delivery space.
Mhm.
And that's something that would find itself all over the city, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've dealt with this issue before, on Orange Street, where you're basically putting, a loading zone in a travel lane, and we didn't entertain that.
Right, we denied that one.
So that's similar to what I think we would do.
So being that I'm just takeout, people don't last very long there. And I have like those apps that Grubhub, DoorDash, and Uber Eats. I mean, people come, it's really fast there. Nobody just stays there and hangs out. It's cold.
And I think I do think we understand that,
Mhm.
and we understand that it becomes a challenge. It's either
Yeah.
something where the DoorDash people would have to be instructed to arrive from a different direction
Yeah.
so that if they need to park or stand, there's a legal place for them to do so rather than right here. And I know that that's not natural in a sense. It's not the necessary natural thing, but it does then create another kind of an obstacle, as I'm sure you're aware, where if there's no other parking along that stretch, it's creating a vehicular movement that's unpredictable and potentially hazardous to oncoming traffic as well as the bus.
For 35 feet?
So I need to defer to the engineers and experts about whether this can be done safely or not.
I mean, for 35 feet, okay, they're gonna come in and out. I just can't see them having these tickets for so much money. And I was thinking too, with the advice of Sergeant Geraci, guy can put a sign in English and Spanish to help them say, to tell them that, don't stay here for a long period of time because, you can get the $75 ticket. I do tell them, but I think if I had a sign, maybe they would be
So
more.
I very much appreciate that Sergeant was looking to see what other kinds of things might be able to be considered.
Right.
I think what I'm hearing is that we're not finding that to be a safe enough situation. It may mean that part of what you'll need to do is a different kind of messaging to the people who come and deliver, as well as your own signs. But it seems that there's already a no parking sign along this stretch that's readily visible. I don't think that we would need to, unless I hear differently, I don't know that we would need to put up additional signage. But if you want to make sure that your customers are avoiding an additional fine or whatever, you may want to make sure it's on your website, on any advertising materials, maybe even have a mini map that shows what the best way to arrive at the location is for pickup and delivery, rather than to do what might seem natural, which is to just drive up alongside the building,
Yeah,
hop
yeah.
in, hop out.
Yeah, it's that fast, yeah. But I think that
we
that
have-
no
we-
parking sign goes up too far to the
So
stop sign.
It is consistent with what we've done elsewhere, which is to deny that kind of a request in similar situations in even more densely populated areas.
Ms. Hernandez, I just have a question for you. It looks like your lot actually bends in an L shape. You own a portion of property alongside, I don't know if, we can't see the lot lines here, but directly behind the shed, your property extends, it looks like, for another 20 feet or more.
Yeah.
Have you explored moving this shed back? I mean, is this a garage that serves a vehicle right now?
It's a garage that has my merchandise in it.
It has your merchandise in it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could potentially move that back. I mean, this would require construction, of course, but you could move that shed back and then create a parking space in front of that. You already have the depressed curb there, so you wouldn't need any additional permit for that. We would have to work with you on a construction permit for the shed, but that would create an additional space for you on your parcel.
Okay, you're saying that 604?
Rhonda,
Property.
are you able to view parcels on your, I don't know if you easily have some parcel map that you can pull up. Do you want to just plug mine in real quick? Maybe I can probably briefly walk her through this, and perhaps if this is a solution, then we can. It could be helpful. Give me one moment here.
For one parking? Is that what you're saying? For one parking?
He's going to show you in just a moment.
Looks like you actually own these two portions of the backyards here. So your shed is currently blocking your access
No, I didn't. No, no.
I don't know if this is correct or not, but it's showing me that you own, here, let me highlight for you. It's showing me that you own all of this. So I don't know if that's the case, but I mean, if you do own this area, you could take the shed and you could move it back here, or even back here, and you could create another parking space right here that you could pull into for additional loading. I don't know, maybe that's too complicated, considering that your neighbors think that they own it.
So it does create part of the challenge that Sergeant Trace had described where people would be coming in and out, backing in and out.
It would be ideal for everyday pull-up customers, for loading perhaps, for box trucks or, other drop-offs, it could be.
And would you have the loading or parking space be parallel to the street or perpendicular to the street in a situation like that?
Sorry, Director Campbell, could you say that again?
So would you have the parking and loading zone be parallel to the street, which means either getting onto the sidewalk or getting deeper in from the sidewalk, but parallel to the street? Or would you have it be perpendicular to the street?
So she currently has two spaces that are perpendicular to the street, and if the shed were moved back in the direction I suggested, you would have a third space perpendicular to the street there.
Okay.
So it would create more backing out traffic in a pedestrian zone. That's the downside of doing that. But there's already a depressed curb there as well, so she would have the right to have a parking space there, I think from a driveway standpoint, at least. I know it's not a perfect solution. I guess my only other thought is that, the frontage on Lime Street, I know it's very busy, but that is a part of, the frontage of her parcel too, and there's enough for one space there, and that could be designated area. It's not a very big space, and I know it's not directly adjacent to the restaurant. I'm concerned about the precedent setting of creating a loading zone and a travel lane, so I'm just trying to offer other solutions that might help.
What do you mean, right by that tree? Is that the area you're talking about?
I believe we're talking about the area out on Line Street, correct?
Yeah, at the front of the building.
Can
Well,
you
the
take us
address-
back to the front
okay.
of the building, Rhonda?
Mhm.
Right there?
Yeah, where
So I
that,
can make that a loading zone?
Yeah, where that white sedan is parked on the right, before the, oh, okay, and the handicap spaces are removed?
Yes, they are.
Okay. So,
I'll take a look.
yeah,
Put some eyes on that area.
okay. Yeah, I know it's not ideal because it's right near a corner and it may not be a very long space, but our sight lines may be a concern there as well.
Sidelines are absolutely going to be an issue there as well.
Yeah.
So if it's something that you're willing and able to to go see it, maybe this is something that we deny the request at this time, but be able to do some further investigation. I mean, it looks like there might be a couple of possibilities for you to pursue or to consider.
Okay. So let's go back to where the garage is, please. All right, so I leave the garage as is, but if I make two spaces in the back of where my property is, then they will be pulling ones, and it'll say Ibarito parking only, right? Go back around where that white car is, in the parking lot.
In the
Yeah.
public parking lot.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's not.
You
That's
saying
not going to work from that city lot standpoint because those are designated parking spaces within the city parking lot.
Correct.
So vehicles are not going to be allowed to enter that parking lot and then onto your property from the city parking lot because those are designated line parking areas in there, which are enforceable.
Okay, so I do away with putting El Jibarito parking only, but I can use that for my own personal or my employees, right? And then I could free up more parking here for the
I
customers.
think she's asking if her and her employees can park in that lot.
If I make a parking lot there.
So where the red, I just want to make sure I
Where
understand.
the white car is,
Okay?
he said that that's my property there, where those gates are.
No.
Where the people think that that's their backyard?
No, what he's saying is the area in front of those cars, where that fence is, that is your property. Where those vehicles you see parked right now, that is in fact a city parking lot. However, the area right in front, along that fence line and behind that fence line,
Right.
that is your property.
Like,
But the only way you can enter your property is from Dolphin Street.
And I should just add some caution to it. The parcel map shows that it's your property, but certainly you should talk to, surveyor or lawyer to confirm that that is actually your property. The parcel lines are showing it's yours, though. So.
okay.
Yeah, so I think if you wanted to utilize that additional space, if that is actually your property, then the only way you could do that is from the area where the shed is currently. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing is that we're not seeing that approving a loading zone as per the request is consistent with what we would like to be able to do, but we would suggest that you look at a couple of other possible alternatives. No guarantees that those would be approved as well, unless there's something more compelling that shows that either proper parking spaces can be provided, that there's a confirmation that you own the part of the property that might be where you might be able to extend, and/or be able to propose a safe way of being able to have a loading zone on the Lime Street part of the frontage of the house.
All right.
Is that a fair statement?
I think that's fair.
Is that to say then we would be denying this particular request?
This specific request, yes, I would say it would be.
Would you like to make that a motion?
I will make a motion to deny 45-2022, but I will add that, request the police to do, site reviews on the potential for the load zone, on South Lime Street, if it seems possible.
Okay, there's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further enhancement or clarification of that motion?
Just a comment, not necessarily an enhancement. For what brought us here today, Ms. Hernandez, I would encourage you to put signage up in that sidewalk area directly in front of your business to discourage patrons from continuing to park in that area, which got us to this point.
Right. And even if you can be including it on the website and on any printed materials, that might be useful as well. But I think that we're inviting you to continue to look at options so that you might be able to find a solution that would be within the realm of approvable. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion is denied. Thank you, and we do ask you to continue to look for solutions. The next item on the agenda is item 47-2022. Consider the request of Cheryl Love with RLA to present and seek approval for land development plans at 347 North Queen Street.
Good afternoon. With me today is Matt Richards, owner on our project. And Matt, do you mind pressing these? So we are proposing a multi-story mixed-use building at the corner, 7 stories with 72 residential units on floors 2 through 7. There would be at the corner of the 2 streets, we would have a 1,509 square foot commercial space, and also along Queen Street, a 877 square foot fitness center for the residents of the building. Primary access for this site would be from Queen Street. If you flip to the third sheet in the handouts, You'll see some slight shading there, and that's the main entrance to the building. That area would be where we are having the main primary residential lobby for the residents in and out of the building. That zone would also be utilized for package deliveries, mail deliveries. It takes you kind of into the building space itself where the resident, the stairway, the elevators and such are. So really what we're looking for are two items specific to the Traffic Commission. Around the corner on Lemon Street, just east of this intersection, the existing service parking lot utilizes the driveway down there, 29-foot depressed curb opening, enter in, exit for the parking with a ticket station in the center. We would essentially be keeping that location but narrowing it, and that driveway would serve as the primary location to get into the site. Under the building itself, this back half of the building or the eastern portion, it's lightly shaded gray on your handouts. That's where parking is provided on site for the residents for some select parking. That also passes out and through the back south corner of that property. There is a gate there that is an emergency gate to the condo property to the rear. And the architect, Tibbetts Weaver, has worked with the Fire Chief Hutchinson to preserve access through under our building and through to that gate to make sure that fire apparatus and whatnot are maintained through that zone as well. So we have looked at the opening here. We believe our 20-foot opening is a reduction in that width, but it is workable. So we would be seeking the approval of that narrowing of that access point as is accordance to the rest of our land development plans currently under review. And also we are seeking a loading zone along North Queen Street where it was initially shown there on the screen. And that would service primarily move-in vehicles for the residents. That zone would also serve purposes for DoorDash deliveries, food deliveries, as we said, package, mail drop-offs and whatnot. So, and that would be north of that location, kind of about where the trees are to the north there. And it would be located directly opposite of the shaded area on your plans, where the canopy projects off and gives protection over that main entrance. Anything, Matt? I think I hit the highlights. We're certainly open to questions. If needed, I do have the plans I can project up on screen for anyone else in the audience with the handouts that you have, if you'd like.
It may be useful to do that.
Yep.
Yeah, this way it's in the same orientation as.
So the driveway for the residents would clear to actually get parking underneath the gate at the rear would remain for emergency access, and then the road zone and the primary entrance.
Is there anything else you wanted to share with us before?
I think I hit the highlights.
Okay.
So open to questions.
Are there any questions from the council?
Cindy, have you
Commission.
approached LPA about the loss of metered parking spaces?
We have not, but we certainly will coordinate that as may be necessary. And we are coordinated from a street tree standpoint, not that that's effective here, but we have obtained the street tree and the shade tree commission's approvals. There were some suggestions to slide the trees on either side of our drive that we're narrowing up on Lemon Street, and we did accommodate those as well. But we certainly will coordinate as necessary with the authority.
Rhonda, are you familiar with any other load zones on that side of Queen Street?
Not that side, but the opposite side, yes.
I want to say there's one just south of this intersection up by Calabar and Hill, could be wrong, where Galarosa used to be, 300 block. Off the top of my head, I can't say.
I have to, yeah, because I go by there all the time, so I can't remember.
I'm trying to just make sure we minimize on-street parking
Understood.
loss, and I was thinking that if there was more than one load zone in that block, if there was a possibility that we could get other stakeholders in the block involved in the possibility of a joint sharing of the load zone, instead of having 2 or 3.
Right, right. I don't recall seeing any, to be honest, on that southern section on that specific side, yeah.
But I was gonna say, if there was more, if there was like 2, possibly even a third down further, I'd say, hey, what if we
Consolidate.
got together in that 300 block, because that is a pretty
It's a busy area.
organized
Mhm.
group of people there. And if like a load zone was centralized, maybe it could even be just a tad longer, but if it's centralized for everybody's use.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's one on the, southwest corner of, Queen Street, right there at Lemon. And there's the bus stop on the northeast corner. Nothing on that corner other than parking on the southeast corner. Bus stop too on Walnut Street. I can't think of any other loading zone in that block right now. I can't, for some reason, I can't think of it.
I think there's one on just north of Jack Williams, on the west side of the street.
West side.
East side, I don't know, I have to look.
Okay.
Other comments? Questions?
Cheryl, I'm just curious whether you explored other avenues for people to load into the building. For instance, you can rent a parking space from the parking authority and you can load into the building. That way, loading zone designated, just, I understand it'd be used by the businesses too, but I just wanted to make clear that the loading can be accommodated by other means, and was that a part of your decision-making?
Understood. I mean, we certainly, Matt has very good experience with regards to the comings and goings from the residential units themselves and the numbers that would be needed for that. We also want to be cognitive to, there's just changes in today's environment and the way that people are coming and going, the package deliveries and the whatnots. We feel that there's limited other alternative space given the density of some of the other businesses that are along that route there. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but our understanding is we wouldn't come here and ask for it if we didn't feel it was necessary for the needs of the project. I know some of our other projects, we've looked at some loading zones as well for similar purposes, and they've been granted as well.
Is it something where you would want or would desire more exploration of the alternatives?
I guess I'm just trying to get a sense of the use. I mean, we're going back to sort of this constantly reoccurring question about changes in delivery and mobility and how to accommodate that. And so I sort of hate that we're involved in this perennial problem that keeps coming back. But there is no, firm policy on how to provide for this. I know from just driving around the city, you know, how many times we've been stuck behind an Amazon delivery truck, you know, as they're unloading something because there's nowhere for them to pull over, you know, so we know that that happens, or an Uber or whatever. And given the, you know, this particular development, the, you know, the units, I believe they meet all of our square footage requirements, but they're still on the smaller side. They're meant to be, I think, you know, more market rate, you know, maybe shorter term professionals or something, you know, in between housing potentially. And I guess the point of that is just to say that, you know, folks may be using those delivery methods and maybe taking advantage of those sorts of services in this location, given that there's also not a lot of on-street or off-street parking that's being provided because of the zoning district that they're in. I was just curious kind of how they came up with the distance. It looks like they're asking for the equivalent of 2 spaces, and kind of whether, you know, how they calculated that in terms of, you know, demand for services, and whether you could shed light on any of that. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Richards. I'm the developer of the project. We were contemplating how large of a space we would need, and when we ultimately decided on this length, we were envisioning circumstances where you could have a moving truck pulling up and unloading, and you need to be able to have that truck off to the side of the road, or especially on Queen Street here, where you don't want it double parked for extensive periods of time. And that's in addition to the regular daily deliveries. So we needed the space to accommodate a larger vehicle as well.
What is the actual length? What is the actual length of the loading zone?
I would note that we all understand Queen Street is extremely busy. You know, we've got our bus station, which of course I'm on the board, south of this, and it is a very busy volume of street, and we don't want to be responsible for additional congestion. We felt that a multi-use space like this for the residents, and just the way that they live these days, for these sorts of residents and community spaces, was going to be important for the convenience, and just to not have impacts on the remaining traffic flow of the northbound traffic on Queen.
Yeah, I guess I'm struggling, like what Douglas said about the this perennial issue, yes, and trying to identify how, you know, how we attack this moving forward, and just wanting, I think, from my perspective, I'd like the city to be able to be more dynamic and able to address these things by designating these spaces, we're kind of losing that flexibility. And I guess I'm more wondering if this should just be it just should be dealt with through our regular channels for requesting loading zones. And I'm not sure, are there limitations on what we allow per block, or the lengths?
So yes on length, and yes for locations. Are there other loading zones in the area? Are there fire hydrants? Are there handicap parking spaces? Are there metered parking spaces, et cetera, et cetera? So those are the things, some of the things that go into whether I would grant based on a site review of a load zone. And as I said to Dean, I really want to get down and put eyes on this block. You know, even Dino said, I can't exactly remember what's there. That area has morphed over the last couple of years. Things have been added, things have been removed. And I'll be honest, I probably passed through this more times than I can count, and I can't accurately say what's there. I would like the opportunity to go out and put eyes on the block and see what we have. And again, one of the conversations you would have to have would be with LPA, because it is in fact a metered parking area. I think that entire block is metered parking both sides. So that's a separate conversation with LPA that would need to be had But I would be happy to give my input based on my observations on the block as well. So RPP, east, west, and north? Very good.
Yeah, I guess that was my, I know we've sort of been setting a precedent of approving these loading zones during traffic commission, but I'm just wondering if it should more be dealt with in our usual process of, and then it only comes to traffic commission if there are issues or concerns. So then it's not sort of a permanent type thing that's on the site plan that's approved in perpetuity, because the loading zone is just an annual thing that is renewed every year. And I'm sure as situations change, we also have the authority to withdraw or change it as needed.
So you're indicating you may be considering you'd rather not see it on land development plans in the future?
If people are in general agreement with that, I'm suggesting that.
I would agree, and I would recommend that things of this nature go through the channels as Cindy has indicated. That comes to me, I come out, I put eyes on, and then the commission has a recommendation from the Bureau prior to the meeting, and it's more of an informed decision.
Okay.
But I guess I'm saying even that it doesn't need to come to the commission unless it's more of it's more of the consent agenda type
Agreed.
item, unless there's issues with it or, that kind of thing. So it would come to us in the consent agenda rather than a
Agreed.
specific.
Yes.
So I'm curious, how would the timing in the situation we're discussing now affect this plan?
What is that procedural timeline that you're describing?
For checking out a loading zone?
Yeah.
For receiving a request and then approving or denying.
Theoretically, if the city does not implode, I can get this done tomorrow morning for you.
Oh, well, then,
Okay, and that's
let's do
assuming
You mean
that it
for-
meets all of
for
the
the load zone?
requirements, yeah.
For the load zone requirements?
Yeah.
I can go and take a look tomorrow morning,
Yeah.
as I have handicap site reviews to do as well, so
So
I can make
the-
this part of my
The minimum
review.
is 35 feet, I think we said earlier, but it can go beyond that.
It can. I want to say,
Okay.
if memory serves, the biggest one we have is off of Manor Street, Restaurant Supply Store.
Yeah,
I want to say that's 53 feet.
I do like the idea of the flexibility of being able to reevaluate for sure. I am sympathetic to the evolving needs of residents in these newer developments, especially, I think, and the services that they may be looking for in terms of deliveries in a very busy downtown. I also want to, I think providing ongoing evaluation of that would be really helpful. This is a very important retail block, and those additional parking spaces are, critical for the small business owners there too, as well as the retail that you would be bringing to this site too. So, yeah, I concur with that idea.
So just as a point of clarification, the process technically goes through Treasury. You make the load zone application, it goes to the Treasury Department. From the Treasury Department comes to us. I receive the site review. We go out and do that. So technically, from a correct procedural standpoint, you're probably looking at a couple weeks. However, that doesn't preclude me from going out and looking ahead of time.
And I think the more appropriate time is when the development has been constructed then as well, because part of your process is then notifying the sign shop. and,
Correct.
All those types of things. I would also say that and I'm assuming that you evaluate this during your review, but the moving it closer, on the end of a block versus being in the middle and, those kind of things would make it more advantageous, I think, for.
Right, and I will be honest with you, if right now I received your load zone application as it stands right now, I would immediately deny it. The reason I would immediately deny it is because it is a metered parking area. So my recommendation to the two of you would be to have that conversation with LPA, get together with me make your application for the load zone. And again, we're kind of doing things in inverse order right now, but just to give you a heads up the way it would work.
That process is fair, so we understand. We would ask, I believe, if we could continue with the rest of the review for this site, so we could potentially receive the rest of our approval.
Yes. So as far as we're concerned, we're just denying this request.
If I may, do we not need action on the reduction on the length of the driveway on Lemon? Or is that considered a modification of the existing drive for the betterment of the block and you do not need to take action? I don't know.
I don't know that we've been asked that before.
Drums, et cetera, we didn't come here.
Drive that would need traffic commission approval. Now, it's a reduction in size, it's
It
not an
is.
increase in size.
Yeah.
It is.
Because it's a reduction, it's
It's
not.
given kind of
no impact.
by, yeah.
But it would still require any kind of modification or addressing of access to
Okay.
a city street does require traffic commission
Okay.
approval.
So we can act on that then. And there, yeah,
Is
please.
it the case that we want to act on that right now, or want to suggest that after there's the discussions regarding the loading zone, which may not impact the process at all, or may imply something else that you may need to want to consider?
I would prefer that we take action on it now, just to create certainty for the land development review, which we're in the midst of now. And our hope is that this project would be concluded in about a month's time. So it would be useful to have that certainty, I think, going
Absolutely,
ahead.
we appreciate that.
So do I hear a motion about approving the reduction of the,
Yeah, I'll make a motion, 47-2022, to approve the reduction of the access drive size on East Lemon Street, but deny the requested load zone on South Queen Street for a later date.
so there's a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is 48-2022. Consider the request for approval from Benjamin Morton with RGS for the project at 1147 Lidditz Pike Stockyard Inn. Is Mr. Morton here? Very good.
That is me. And I don't know whether this will actually function for me here, so pardon me for a moment.
On the viewer, right. We'll just switch that quick.
Yeah, I know. That one was never.
That was a rhetorical question.
Are people ready?
We
Do you
don't
think
think
it
we've
will
ever
be
been
able to
able to
work
get
from
that one
here?
to work.
I have it into the HDMI, but
Oh, we often have to bring a cord from here, a cable from here. If you have a laptop that you want connected, is there a
Sure.
cable, a loose cable here?
Be just like what we did for Doug's. That was
Thank you.
all right. Well, as was previously noted, my name's Benjamin Morton. I'm a landscape architect and project manager at RGS Associates, and I'm here today with Ben Lesher of SDL DevCo. to talk with you about the yards at 1147 Woodeds Pike. Really here to talk
May I
about.
ask you to just speak a little bit closer
Sure.
into the microphone?
Uh,
Or maybe pull
here
the
to talk-
microphone up to you a little bit closer? Yeah.
Okay. We'll be talking about new on-street parking, closure of 2 existing access drives, and continued use of an existing access drive. And I'm just going to briefly give you the broader site context, brief description of the program for this site, and then we'll dive into some of the details that were in the exhibits previously provided. So up on screen and on your first sheet right now, we're just showing the larger context of this site, which is on the north side of the railroad tracks near the train station, on the site that was formerly the Stockyards, and is often known to people as the site of the Stockyard Inn, bounded on the north by Marshall Avenue. That is our only public right-of-way frontage. On the east by the Stockyards Office Park, the south by the railroad, and then on the west by a PennDOT parcel that has stormwater management. If you want to go to the next one, Ben. Looking at our site plan, a portion of the existing in-building is being relocated to the northeast portion of the site, adjacent to an access drive that was installed during the initial phase of the Stockyards Office Park. And then this creates space for 2 new buildings that collectively will house 226 units of multifamily housing, as well as about 12,000 square feet of mixed commercial and medical office space. About 1/3 of the site's parking is going to be under roof in the first level of the buildings, which is what the lighter orange areas are on the graphic. If you want to move on. So we're zooming in now to the north end of the site just to look at the 4 points of access that the site currently has. And I've numbered these on there in sort of the larger labels. The ones in green are access points that we're going to retain, and the ones in red will be closed. So the existing access 1 is to Marshall Avenue, and we will have just some details of how we're reconfiguring a crosswalk there. Existing access 2 provides access to the broader street grid or roadway grid that's in the Stockyards Office Park, points east. And then existing accesses 3 and 4, which are much closer to the Woodeds Pike intersection, will be removed. You want to go to the next slide? And then in the proposed condition, we are going to be proposing dedication of some additional right-of-way, partly to clean up some conflicting right-of-way lines that jog in the front of this site, but also to create additional space for on-street parking, the required tree planting strip, and then, the proper width of a pedestrian access route within the right-of-way itself. And this brings the right-of-way in front of this parcel almost in line with the right-of-way as you go farther down Marshall Ave to the east. So as we're illustrating on here, we, in green, or sort of green on this screen, it's 7 on-street parking spaces that will be added. The western edge of those spaces is approximately the western edge of existing access drive number 3 that's being removed. And it's keeping us, I believe, about 150 feet to the east of the crosswalk at the Woodeds Pike intersection. If you want to go on, Ben. And then here, just doing a comparison of the existing access drive 1 in the existing condition versus proposed. We're not intending to change any of the slopes in the area of the roadway, and the curb lines and radii are going to stay the same, but with the change in the right-of-way, we'll be shifting the sidewalk so that it's better in line across the property to the frontage in front of our neighbor. And a benefit of doing this actually is it pulls the crosswalk a little bit further into the throat of the access drive and narrows the crossing length from, I think, about 49 feet down to 36, which is certainly a benefit from a pedestrian comfort level. So I think that's generally what we're proposing here, and happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. Are there any comments or questions from the commission? No comments? No questions? Are there any comments or questions from the public?
See what happens when you don't ask for a load zone?
So they're asking for a request for approval. Does someone want to make a motion based on what we've seen?
Director Campbell, I'm sorry, can I just make one clarification just for the boards, make sure that they're clear that the on-street parking requirements, or that the on-street parking that's being required does, infer that we're okay with the right-of-way dedication, which will eventually go to city council by ordinance, but that is a part of the on-street parking arrangement. I don't have any concerns about that, but just wanted to be clear that two of the spaces we're approving tonight are to be dedicated in the future.
That's section 3.
Section 3.
The area 3 that they had originally designated. Existing access drive 3. That's where the rededicated spaces would be?
Well,
correct?
Ben, maybe you can clarify. I think that there's a different area that you're looking to have the city dedicate. Can you just clarify the two portions that you have highlighted there?
Oh, sure, sorry, and the areas that are highlighted actually don't fully line up with what is going to be dedicated, and maybe I'll pop over to the screen there for a moment and can try to illustrate something there. To clarify, the colors highlighted here, the green are the parking spaces themselves, and then as you move, south on the page, there is a rather dark line that is what the proposed right-of-way line would be. And so there's about, depending on the area, 10 to 12-foot area there, I think, that would be dedicated along the entire frontage. The area that's highlighted in purple is, in fact, it just wanted to highlight that land, rather than being right-of-way, is actually a parcel that the city owns, which I'm sure in the process of land development will work out the mechanics of this, but we're simply having some sidewalk go through that area to connect with the existing sidewalk at Lititz Pike.
Okay.
I would just say any approvals, I would prefer that they be contingent on review, the design review through the land development process. So making sure, all the details as far as the radiuses and all that. I know we're still having conversations about pedestrian access and those kind of things as well. So I would just ask that it's contingent on that review.
So had we had the motion?
We can make a motion for 48-2022 to make approval of the access, the removal of the 2 access drives and continuing the existing drives that are there, and in addition to make it a contingent on the parking on Marshall Avenue.
Second.
Well, contingent on
Contingent on land development plan.
land development.
Land review.
Yep.
Okay. Second.
So there's been a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Any other comment from the public? So, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries as stated. Thank you
Thank
very,
you.
very much for your presentation. Good luck. I understand that there's another item that has been added. Rhonda? Item 44, 2020, which is not on the current agenda, is considering the request of Joyce Ann Thomas to have an additional permit for a member of her household located at the 300 block of East Walnut Street. Ms. Thomas?
Yes.
I'm sorry for being late. I didn't know you moved over here.
Can you bring the,
Sorry for being late also. I'm sorry. I didn't know you moved. I thought you were still at the market. My name is Joyce Ann Thomas. I live at 339 East Walnut Street. I am a homeowner. I've lived there since 37 years now. Now my children, yep, that's it. My children now are old enough to have their own cars, and you're only able to have 2 cars there per parking space. I did come up in 2010, I believe it was, and I was approved for that, and at the time, it was supposed to be looked into to see if we even need permit parking. My neighbors came up with me at that time, because my neighbors, they have parking in the rear. I am not able to have parking in the rear due to a garage that sits in the back of my home. So my neighbors did offer for me to use their permit parking, but you're not able to do that because the car has to go be registered at that home. And they didn't have a problem with it because that's not where they park. They park in the back. Again, I'm pretty sure it was 2020, sorry. So last year, we didn't have a problem, but I didn't know my son was getting tickets. So he was getting tickets until I asked him, and he said he went down and they told him that he could not do it anymore. So when I looked into it and I spoke with him, he said, pulled it up, and it was only temporary. So that was my mistake. I thought that they were just going to look into it to see if it was even worth keeping it as a permit parking, being that my neighbors are not the ones that use it. So I'm asking that we are able to have that extra permit parking for my son so that he's able to and not continue to get tickets, because at this time, me and my husband do already have ours.
thank you very much, Ms. Thomas. Is there anything else that you'd like to be able to share with us before we start talking?
Well, I would like to share, since it is up there. If you're looking where the East Walnut Street is and the line in the center that divides the cars over, when that first happened, we didn't have the bike route going there at that time. And we were told as long as when we're going up parking, as rear parking, your front comes up as you come back in. As long as we're on that side, it shouldn't be a problem if there would be an accident, because there was an accident and the other person that zoomed around was at fault. But at this time now, due to the parking the way it is with that bike going up and you have that extra sitting there, on your way backing out, you have to go over because the line now is moved over as you're backing up. We are still going over. We did have 2 accidents there, but I don't know what the outcome was because they just worked it out with each other. But I would like to know who would be at fault now, because when you go to back, now being that that line is over, cars are going around you and they're not like waiting till you park. And my neighbors can tell you that we actually stop and then let them know. I put my hand out the window with my light blinking. They still zoom around you. So if that would be an accident, who would be at fault for that now? Because you don't have that.
Okay, thank you very much for both questions. Comments from the commission?
So I just want some clarification. This is gonna be a 4th permit for you?
Third.
She got a 3rd in 2020, did she not?
That's the one she's asking to have removed.
Oh, it haven't renewed, okay.
Right. Because
Okay,
I made
thank
a
you.
mistake and I thought that it just continued over. But we were supposed to come and see about it being renewed and find out if you were going to keep the permit, being that the neighbors there all have rear parking. We're the only ones that do not have the rear parking.
Any other comments or questions about the renewal? If there are no questions about the renewal, do we want to answer the other technical question first, or just act on the the request.
Is it a technical question about who would be at fault? Or,
Yes, and/or, I would ask, and/or, is there anything to be aware of?
I mean, as I understand it, the lane widths are meeting all the standards for design. Who's at fault is up to others, and would not be a determination this board would make. I guess the insurance companies, or I don't know whether the police bureau weighs in on that or not.
Or even if it, for back here where the rear parking is there any way it could shift over? Because I've seen times where the lanes go and then they come around and go out for that area. And there was guys that just came out and they noticed it also, getting out the way of cars, the way they go. They were out to repaint that, and they were having a problem doing it because of the way the cars were zooming around there. So they can contest to that. If there's any way it could be moved over.
So the key request was related to the additional permit. And
Correct.
and that's something that, let's act on the request part.
Okay.
Is there a recommendation?
Motion to approve?
Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any further consideration? Further discussion? Yes.
Excuse me, would I be able to have it, being that it's November now? Could I have it for next year too? Because I'd have to end up coming right back, because it's just November, and January we have to start it all over again. So how long would this go in effect? Or is it something that we can know that we continue it? Or?
Yeah, you'll have to appear again or make the request again. But I think isn't that administratively?
No, it's not administrative, but this is probably what happens where in 2020 it's approved and LPA had expired at December 31st.
Right.
They were not aware in 2021 that
Okay.
they did not have that permit. So she was saying she just found out from her son that he was getting tickets, and they were asked to come back now to have it approved for 23.
Right, okay.
She's asking.
For 23?
Effective now, well, 2023.
So I'd like to amend my motion to be the remainder of 2022 and all of 2023.
There's been an amendment to the motion. Does that need to be reseconded?
Seconded.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, for requesting the clarification. There's been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So the motion carries in the sense that you would have that permit for the remainder of this year, of the current calendar year and all of next calendar year.
Okay, thank you. And then that would be
Does-
looked into sometime.
Does anyone want to comment on her other question about care consideration? I mean, I think Douglas had said that it might be more of
So regarding your theoretical accident, if somebody is backing into one of those parking spaces and the person backing into that parking space is struck by another motor vehicle, nothing else withstanding, again, very theoretical, it would be the person's fault who was operating in the forward moving lane of travel on Walnut Street, not the person backing in, unless of all of a sudden you slammed on your brakes and threw it in reverse, and you were careless in those actions. But again, we could what if it all day, but theoretically, if you did all the proper things, you signaled, you slowed down, and as you were backing in, you were impacted, that would be the other driver's fault.
Thank you.
Okay, right. It'd be no different than, she's right, like parallel parking or something of that nature.
Is that because the forward-moving vehicle has better visibility and the better?
Right,
Yeah.
and they have an obligation to yield to an obstruction that they see while operating a motor vehicle.
Thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You also brought something up about moving spaces.
No, that
Back.
was basically it. I was saying, would it be easier if we would be able to move, to give us that room again back? But my main fear was if someone ends up hitting me and I end up having the accident. But I was asking if that line would be able to be moved back over. But I'm okay knowing that it's not gonna be my fault. Okay?
Again, theoretically.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Very good. Thank you very much. So now we go on to the consent agenda. There's three key items. One is tentatively approved or installed handicap parking signs. Signs that have been removed for handicap parking and no parking signs, and then the following conditional temporary parking permit having been issued by LPA.
We'll make a motion to approve 49 through 51.
I'll second.
Is there a motion and a second? Is there any further consideration? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much. Is there any additional business? If not, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
From you?
Yeah.
No
I'll
com,
make a motion.
Second?
all in favor?
Aye.
The meeting is adjourned.